I have one of those truths that can change the way you live, heal, perform, and relate to yourself. And it's this: your power returns when you let go. And I think that matters because a lot of people have been taught, either directly or indirectly, that power comes from gripping harder, trying harder, thinking harder, controlling more, monitoring more, correcting more, staying more mentally involved, staying more on top of everything, never letting up, never fully relaxing, never fully trusting. And on the surface, that can sound logical because if you care, you grip. And if it matters, you tighten up. And if you want a result, you stay all over it. And if you want to avoid mistakes, you control more. And if you feel pressure, you think harder. And if you want change, you force it. That is how a lot of people have learned to live. But I really don't think that's where our highest power lives. I think a lot of people are not suffering because they are powerless. I think they are suffering because they are interfering. And that's a light bulb moment. The grip is what's blocking them. The fear, the ego, the overthinking, the second guessing, the self-correction, the trying too hard, the needing to control the outcome, the mentally staying on top of everything. All of that often feels like effort, discipline, responsibility, caring, commitment. But a lot of times it is interference. And what makes this so important is that many people do not realize the difference. They think the grip is helping. They think if I let go, I'll lose control. If I let go, I'll stop caring. If I let go, I'll mess up. If I let go, things will fall apart. If I let go, I'll lose my edge. If I let go, I'll become passive. If I let go, I'll miss something important. So they keep gripping. And then they wonder why they feel blocked, why they feel tight, why they feel exhausted, why they feel stuck, why things do not flow, why peace feels far away, why performance gets harder under pressure, why change feels like fighting themselves. Because what they are calling power is often the very thing that is blocking power. And that is a profound thing to understand. Because when I say let go, I do not mean stop caring, be passive, quit trying, check out, be irresponsible, or just float around doing nothing. That's not what I mean at all. I mean release the interference, release the ego grip, release the fear grip, release the over control, release the self-will that thinks it has to run everything, release the conscious mind when it is getting in the way of what a deeper intelligence already knows how to do. That is very different. And I think this is why people sometimes experience these almost magical moments where suddenly everything feels easier, freer, clearer, more natural. Athletes know this feeling. Golfers, shooters, baseball players, boxers, they all know this feeling. High achievers know this feeling. And honestly, everyday people know this feeling too. There are those moments where the conscious mind gets quieter, the fear eases up, the trying stops, the grip softens, and then all of a sudden something opens. You feel freer, lighter, more in sync, more natural, more present. Time seems to fly by. The action feels cleaner. Your body knows what to do. You stop strangling the moment. And very often people describe it like it did not even feel like them doing it in the usual ego way. It felt like it was happening through them. And that matters because I do not think that is imaginary. I think that is real access. I think that is what many people call the zone, the flow, being aligned, being connected, being tuned in, tapped in, and turned on. And I think the reason it feels so powerful is because in that moment, the fearful conscious mind is no longer interfering so loudly. The higher self has room. A greater intelligence has room. A deeper wisdom has room. A more natural, powerful, aligned part of the person can finally move. And that is why this week's theme is so much deeper than just relax. Right? This is about access to peace, access to healing, access to your higher self, access to performance, access to clarity, access to aligned action. And that access often returns when the grip loosens. I think one of the reasons this matters so much is because many people have only experienced letting go accidentally. They let go because they got tired. They let go because they got frustrated. They let go because they reached the point where they almost wanted to give up. They let go because mentally they could not keep gripping so hard anymore. And then suddenly they did better. That happens all the time. An athlete gets so frustrated, they almost stop caring, and then they perform better. A shooter gets so irritated, they stop over-managing, and suddenly targets break easier. A golfer finally quits trying to fix everything and starts swinging freer. A person in life stops trying to solve everything in one mental panic and suddenly gets clarity. And usually people think the magic happened because they finally got serious enough, or emotional enough, or desperate enough. But that is not what happened. What happened is they let go. The frustration knocked the grip loose. That is a huge insight, because if letting go is what opened the door, then people do not actually have to wait until they are broken down by frustration to access that state. They can begin learning what letting go really is. They can begin practicing release on purpose. They can begin recognizing self-interference sooner. They can begin understanding what is happening when ego and fear take over. They can begin noticing how much the conscious mind gets in the way. And that is empowering, because then the zone is not just a lucky accident. Flow is not just a random gift. Peace is not just for easy days. Power is not just for when everything lines up. Now it becomes something a person can move toward intentionally. That is huge. I think this is especially important because so many people have confused force with power. They think, if I'm intense, I'm powerful. If I'm controlling, I'm powerful. If I'm always mentally on, I'm powerful. If I'm hard on myself, I'm powerful. If I stay in pressure, I'm powerful. If I never let up, I'm powerful. But what if those are not power? What if those are symptoms of fear? What if those are signs the ego is trying to protect itself? What if those are signs that the self-will is running the system? What if those are signs that the conscious mind is interfering? That changes everything, because then the goal is no longer to become more intense. The goal is to become more aligned. The goal is not more effort at all cost. The goal is less interference. The goal is not more self-strangling. The goal is access to something wiser, access to something deeper, access to your higher self, access to the state where your best can actually happen. And I think that is why this applies to so many categories in life. And stress-free mindful living, people often think peace comes from controlling life more. But peace often comes when they stop interfering so much in life. Not because nothing matters, because the over-control is making everything heavier. And in weight loss and wellness, people often think change comes from pressure and force, but a lot of times that force creates more inner resistance, not less. It creates more fighting, more shame, more self-attack, more grip. And the deeper change starts happening when they stop fighting themselves so hard and start allowing a more aligned self to lead. And in high achievers, the same thing happens. They think pressure is what makes them powerful, but often that pressure is what is draining their clarity, their joy, their presence, and highest level functioning. And in sports, it's obvious. The more someone overthinks, overcontrols, and tries to consciously run what should be trusted, the more they often block the very performance that they want. That is why flow matters. That is why the zone matters, because the zone is not simply a nice feeling. It is a state where interference has dropped enough for something higher and better to move. And I really do believe it is spiritual. I know not everyone uses the same language for it, but I'm not afraid to say it. I believe when people truly let go, they are not just psychologically relaxing, they are becoming open to higher intelligence, open to deeper wisdom, open to their higher self, open to a power greater than the fearful conscious mind. And I think that is why it can feel euphoric, why time can feel different, why it can feel more alive, why it can feel like it is not the little fearful self doing it anymore. Because in a way, it isn't. The ego is quieter, the fear is softer, the conscious mind is not strangling the process, and something greater has room. That's not weakness, that is alignment. And I think one of the most healing things a person can realize is the thing I keep calling power may actually be interference. That is such freeing truth, because then you can stop worshiping the grip. You can stop assuming the control is helping. You can stop assuming the pressure is necessary. You can stop assuming that overthinking is wisdom. You can stop assuming the force is the path. Now you can start asking better questions. Where am I gripping? Where am I interfering? Where am I trying to control what should be allowed? Where am I letting ego run the moment? Where am I so mentally involved that I'm blocking the very thing I want? That is where real change begins, not by attacking yourself for it, by seeing it. Awareness is powerful. because once you see the interference, you can begin loosening it. And that doesn't always have to look dramatic. Sometimes letting go is very practical. It's one breath, one unclenching of the jaw, one drop of the shoulders, one softening in the stomach, one decision to stop rerunning the thought, one moment of not forcing the answer, one choice to stop trying to mentally manage the next 10 steps, one release of the need to control the outcome right now. That is letting go too. And I think people miss that because they imagine surrender has to be huge, but often it starts small. It starts with, I do not have to grip this hard, so hard right now. I do not have to let fear run this whole moment. I do not have to make the conscious mind the highest authority here. I can let something wiser lead. That is powerful. And I think the more a person practices that, the more they start discovering something beautiful. Their best self was not missing. It was underneath the grip. Their peace was not gone. It was underneath the interference. Their clarity was not absent. It was underneath the mental noise. Their power was not lost. It was blocked. And when the block starts loosening, the power starts returning. And that is why the theme matters so much. Your power returns when you let go. So what do we do with this practically? I think the first step is notice where you are gripping mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. What are you trying to force? What are you trying to control? What are you trying to mentally run that may not need your fearful mind running it? And the second step is notice what the grip is costing you. Is it costing you peace, trust, flow, sleep, joy, freedom, connection, your best performance, your higher self? That matters because when people finally see the cost of the grip, they become more willing to loosen it. And third, ask what fear is underneath the grip. Fear of failure, fear of uncertainty, fear of vulnerability, fear of looking bad, fear of not having control, fear of letting something bigger lead, because fear is often underneath the interference. And then this fourth step, practice one small release moment daily. Just one, not 10, one. One breath, one pause, one physical release, one letting go of the need to solve it right now, one moment of saying, I release the grip and allow something deeper to lead. And that matters. And the fifth step is start recognizing that letting go is not losing power. It is removing what is blocking power. And that is the biggest shift. Because once you truly understand that, surrender stops sounding scary. Now it starts sounding like access. Access to peace, access to flow, access to clarity, access to healing, access to your higher self, access to a greater intelligence than the little fearful mind. And that is what makes this so profound. So if I were to leave you with one thing today, it would be this. A lot of people are trying to become more powerful by gripping harder. But often the grip is what is blocking the power. And once you start seeing that, life changes because now you stop assuming force is the path. Now you stop worshiping the interference. Now you start becoming willing to loosen what fear, ego, and self-will have been tightening. And that is when so much starts opening. Peace opens, healing opens, flow opens, performance opens, wisdom opens, your higher self has room, your power returns when you let go. So maybe the question this week is not, how do I try harder? Maybe it is, where am I in my own way? What am I gripping that is blocking what I want? And what would happen if I loosen the grip just enough to let something deeper move? And that is where so much begins. Of course, as always, I'd love to help you with any of this. So check out my work and my products and services at dawngrant.com because I would love to help you.